Recently, a video of baby Denver picking up his leash when I dropped it and returning it to my hand got really popular on the internet, and everyone was asking, how do I teach this to my dog? How do I teach my dog to pick up their leash? So today, we're gonna answer that question. Hi, I'm Laura from Doggy U, and I'm a certified guide dog mobility instructor, service dog trainer, and trick trainer who's been training and placing service dogs for the last 15 years. And today, we're gonna be talking about the retrieve. Now, most videos are going to save the most important piece of information for the end so that you stick around to the end of the video. I'm going to ask you to stick around to the end of the video either way and give you the most important piece of information first, because it is the crux of everything else that we talk about today. And that is that you can't get away from the fact that foundations matter. So when you ask me, how do I teach my dog to retrieve the leash? What I have to tell you is, I don't teach them to retrieve the leash first. There is no shortcut to just retrieve leash. We need to get a solid retrieve first, and it's important, this is the most important part, off the important object. So when we're talking about especially service dog work, I never want to start the behavior on the object that is going to be the end goal behavior, because you're going to make a lot of mistakes at the front end of it, and we want to make those mistakes on a different object. And don't feel bad about that. Everyone makes mistakes. I make mistakes, and I'm a professional trainer. So I always start on a different object than my goal object. So if I want to teach a medication retrieve, I don't start my medication retrieve on my medication. If I want to teach my dog to retrieve a crutch for me, which I am starting the process of teaching of, I don't start the retrieve on the crutch. I want to make my mistakes on a throwaway object, an object I don't care about, and then once I have it to a level that I'm happy with, then I introduce the important object, which in this case would be the leash. Now, don't worry, we are going to talk specifically about how to do the leash retrieve and how to make that easier on your dog, but let's first talk about the things that I start retrieving on. And it's not things like a dumbbell. Again, I might do competition obedience. I don't want to make mistakes on my dumbbell. I want to have that nice retrieve before I get to my dumbbell, before I get to the important object. So when I start, I might use something like a paint roller, nice and soft and squishy, or a dowel. So different sizes for different dogs, but these items are just throwaway items. They're never gonna have to retrieve these in real life. So they work really well for this, and they are nice and like easy for your dog to grip, especially the paint roller, and pick up. Or if my dog has a nice play retrieve and they have a play item they like to use, I might start with that play item. So there's kind of two different ways to think about teaching the retrieve, or the ways that I teach the retrieve. And you're gonna say, well, which one should I use? It kind of depends on your dog. So if you have a dog that already likes to pick up objects, I got a retriever, right? Because a lot of my tasks that I need for service dog work revolve around the retriever. So I got a dog that naturally wants to retrieve. He didn't naturally want to bring it to hand, so we'll talk about that in a minute, but you're going to kind of approach it based on what your dogs need. And the first way to do that is the play retrieve. Your dog already likes picking up items. We just need to shape the behavior of bringing that item back to you and returning it to hand. The good news is I made an entire video on how I did that from start to finish with Denver, with my 7 different exercises that I train to get that nice behavior. Now I'm going to go over a little bit right now, the most important one, so that you have that, but definitely check out this video to get the full thing so you can shape a really nice retrieve. Now, the most important part of teaching that play retrieve should actually be taught whether your dog naturally wants to pick up items or not. And that's the go out, come back, return to hand portion. And you don't have to have a dog that picks up objects to start teaching that process. So I'm going to show you that here. That's where my dog is going to go out, eat a treat. You're going to call them back and have them touch your hand. Now you can get fancy and eventually have them come to heel and sit next to you and all of that. But for right now, what we care about is the dog going out, immediately returning to you and touching your hand. Targeting your hand is where our object is going to want to go. And I still warm up Denver, even when we're working on getting ready for our first hunt test. I still warm him up with this exercise to make sure that he is very solid on go out, come immediately back, return to hand. Once you have that pattern solidified, then all you have to do is insert the object that they already want. But patterning behavior is really where it's at when we're talking about service dog work. And you also need them to be able to out it. I have a video on that too, so I will link all of the videos in the comments and the description so that you can find them and kind of parse out what your particular dog is in need of. Now, the other type of retrieve that I teach is the shaped retrieve. And that's not to say that the play retrieve isn't shaped. It really is. But, for ease of understanding what's going on, the shaped retrieve is generally for that dog that isn't going to open their mouth, isn't going to naturally bring something, pick something up in their mouth. We need to teach them to open their mouth so that they can grab something. This one was really important for Jake, my old cattle dog. He came to me not even wanting to pick up a tennis ball, so I had to do everything from scratch. Now, even with a dog that has a really nice play retrieve, I may still choose to do this type of retrieve. And we can shape it a couple different ways. And again, it really depends on the dog. Some dogs, I'll shape it from the top and the bottom. And by that, I mean, I will shape them to open their mouth and put their mouth on something that is in my hand. And then I might also shape them from the ground to go and pick up an item. Generally, when we're talking about shaping it in the hand, the dog is going to, you're going to present the item and the dog's going to start touching it, and you're going to mark for touching it, and then they're going to, double touch it with their nose, and you're going to mark for double touching it, and then they're typically going to do something like open their mouth to grab it, and you're going to mark and reinforce the heck out of that and kind of go from there. I do have a video on that as well, so I actually have a video series because teaching the shaped retrieve is a little bit more intensive and has like different types of exercises you can do depending on what your dog needs. They may need help with their hold. They may need help with picking it up. So I have a 3-part series on that. That's over on Patreon, but the first part of the series is absolutely free. You just sign up for a free membership and you'll have access to that series. I will put a link to that as well. But generally what it's going to be is you're going to have the object and you're going to mark for interaction and then mark for opening the mouth. And then you're going to build on that opening the mouth to being able to grab it, being able to lower it and then grab it and bring it up to your hand and so forth. Now, the other way that you can shape that retrieve is from the ground up, meaning the item's on the ground and the dog is going to look at the item, you mark and reward for that, touch the item with their nose, mark and reward for that, and eventually go and open their mouth on the item. You jackpot for that and then continue until they're actually gripping the item. Once they're gripping the item, you can shape it up to hand.
So here's an example of Denver being shaped to pick up this metal cup, which he's never retrieved before, so I thought it would be a good example of how that might work. You can see that I'm marking and rewarding for going towards the cup, for touching the cup with his nose, for mouthing the cup, and eventually for picking it up and then retrieving it to hand. I'm not looking for perfection. I'm looking for all the little steps that build to the bigger picture, which is him being able to retrieve the cup. So even in the last rep, I'm having to kind of scoop my hand underneath it for him to be able to target my hand. But this is a really hard retrieve item, being metal and large and oddly shaped. So I want a reward for each little progression and step towards success.
But it's all done by splitting the behavior down and being able to reinforce your dog for effort, for trying, for getting each little piece in the progression. So again, check out the resources that I already have available on that and they'll really help you out. And hey, if you're liking this video so far, I would love it if you could head on down and boop that like button. Doing so positively reinforces me and lets me know that you want more videos like this one. Now let's talk specifically about the leash and how we can split that progression down for your dog. So the first thing that we can do is if you've shaped that retrieve, shaped putting the item in their mouth, once you've got them able to pick up a variety of different items that isn't the leash, I'm going to present the leash and mark and reinforce for them taking the leash in their mouth so they know it's another retrieve item. But for some dogs, picking up this like floppy item of the leash can be really hard. So we can actually break that down a little bit easier for them as well. You can start by getting a thicker leash so it's easier for them to grip. You could also wrap that leash in like duct tape or painter's tape to make the area grippy or potentially where you want them to grip. Like if you're trying to have them target the handle, you can wrap that in something that looks like a target to them and have them pick it up from there. And if your dog is really struggling, you can actually make the leash even thicker or use an item that they already know how to retrieve. So you could like drop your leash through your painter's tape, and I'd probably tape it so that or painter roll thingy, I'd probably tape it so it didn't move and have them retrieve this at first. And then you could cut this down smaller and smaller and then go to the duct tape portion of this. Or you can even add something like a pool noodle. So one of the things that I'm training Denver to do is to retrieve my crutch so that if I have a subluxation or a dislocation from my EDS and I need my crutch, which happens from time to time, he can retrieve it for me because a lot of times I'm not able to move or do stairs or whatever. But I'm not going to start him on his retrieve with picking up this giant metal unwieldy thing because that's really hard. What I can do instead is teach him how to balance this big item by giving him the target of where I want him to grip it to start so that he patterns the behavior easier, of gripping it in the middle, making it easier for him to carry. So I've just used this pool noodle, which he's practiced retrieving, and now I have basically a target where I can have him pick him up. I know you didn't ask about crutches, but this is a good example of how do we make something easier for our dog to be successful. And that's how we're doing it with this.
Leash. You'll also want to ensure that you're practicing the leash retrieve specifically with the dog in a variety of locations. So you usually will start with the dog in front of you because it's easiest for the dog to bring it to you, but you also want to practice from heel position, from the side, and also from lying down if you're going to have them retrieve it from a stay.
So like in all things with dog training, it's all about teaching those foundations. There is no magic trick to having them retrieve a leash versus some other item. It's all about splitting that behavior down so that your dog can understand each piece of it and then putting those pieces together. And I know that foundations don't seem sexy, but they are so important when you're talking about you're having a medical episode and you're not able to really handle your dog. That's when your holes in your foundation are going to show up. The time you spend on foundations is never wasted. I spend so much time on foundation work, even with my almost 9-year-old Cooley, because the foundations are where it's at. And I know they don't seem like super fun and sexy, but they are. They are so important because once you get these foundations down, you can do so many things. You can teach your dog to fetch medication, fetch you water, be able to pull open a fridge. All of those hinge on the fact that you've taught a really nice retrieve with something as silly as a paint roller. All right, y'all. I hope you have an awesome day. If you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, check out the resources in the description and in the comments, and leave me a comment if you want to see more videos like this one. You all have an awesome day. Happy training. And yeah, watch this video somewhere around here next.
Fetch, fetch. Good job, bud. Yes, awesome. Good.